What's up, everyone? I really like that intro. How do you think Jesse got the original music to go in with the other music? Do you think he made the other music himself? Do you think he did that? I don't know. But that's not what we're here to talk about. But I think about these things. Anyway, what we've really been thinking about all week is the injury issue. And I know, like, maybe some people are like, man, again? Yeah. I feel like really this is the only thing that Niners fans and media people should be talking about until they prove it's not an issue. And it's been an issue 8 years in a row. So well, we've been thinking about it for days, and I think it's pretty obvious that if it were just one thing, the Niners would have fixed it by now. Problem here is that it's a lot of things working in concert together. So we'll try to isolate them today. A lot of people are like, Grant, why are you putting it all on Kyle? Fair. Why are you? And I would say, why would you put it all on the training staff? I think these guys all have to share it in their own ways, and let's try to pinpoint where each person is responsible. Because if we don't do this, the Niners won't do this, and this will never get fixed. So we're once again performing quality control. Quality control to the rescue. All right. Anyway, starting with practice. It seems to me that if the Niners could just cut down the practice injuries, that they would be in the middle of the pack or among the league average in injuries. But no. Rob, since Kyle Shanahan became the head coach of this team, 32 players have gotten injured in practice. 32 different guys since 2017 in practice. Now, not all of them missed times in games, but they all missed practice time because they got hurt in practice. Would you like me to read the list of names?
Please. And then I'm going to do my AI impersonation.
I know it's like we're getting people hurt in practice. Imagine if Allen Iverson owned this team instead of Jed York. What would be going on right now? Practice?
Not a game.
Not a game.
We talking about practice.
And what's so troubling about this is football is the kind of sport where you know you're going to lose a certain percentage of players in games, and there's nothing you can freaking do about it. The only thing you have control over is practice. And the Niners go hard. They don't do live hitting, but they compete very, very hard every time, even in the spring. So let me give you the list, all right?
Let's do it. Some
of these, I've been trying to put together the list, and honestly, I got to like 16. Someone came through yesterday on Twitter and had the full list, which makes me think, is this like a burner from the organization? But they had names I hadn't heard in a long time. Let me go through them, starting, I guess, with the most recent ones.
Right.
Tavarius Moore, Justin School, Jeff Wilson Jr., D Ford, DJ Reed, Jalen Hurd, Brandon Ayuk, Tom Compton, Quan Alexander, Nick Bosa, Jerick McKinnon, Malcolm Smith, Matt Breida, Reuben Foster, Jimmy Ward, Eric Reed, Jaquaski Tart, Jason Verrett, Ben Garland, Richie James Jr., Jawan Jennings. I have more. Capron Lewis Moore, Ross Reynolds, DJ Jones, Chris Fink, DeForest Buckner, Dakota Watson, Zach Franklin, K'Wan Williams, Jimmy Gilbert, Jeremy Zuta, and Richard Sherman. That's 32 players.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
And for those fans that are crying out that hey, stop talking about this, we will as soon as it stops being an issue.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you have to.
This is the only way you fix something is by making it a point of emphasis. This is what Jed needs to be doing. Kyle, here's the full list, 32 players. What's the solution?
Yeah, you got to float it up to the top. You got to really examine this issue. And you definitely have to explore this practice angle, because you're right. There are a myriad of reasons that contribute to this injury issue. Mm-hmm. But the one that we control, the one that we've got to focus on, the one that is easiest to adjust is those injuries that are occurring in practice.
Easiest.
And you have to wonder, does it come from the old school mentality that Kyle grew up around with his father? And I get that. Steel sharpens steel, that you build up calluses from hitting. Like
competition is the best form of whatever. Yes. Brings out the best in people. Yes.
And that's fine if you're middle of the pack in injuries. Great. Right. Pursue that to your heart's desire. When you are consistently now for 7 years in that top of the list for games missed due to injury, it's time to change things. It's time to explore all of the possibilities. And certainly the practice angle early on in practice where you're encouraging competition, I don't know. For me, I wonder if Kyle's got such a complex offense, right? Everyone always talks about how long it takes to get it down. and learn it truly and really master it. And so I wonder if earlier on in these practices where you don't need the competition, where you don't need to be pushing guys quite as hard, if there were an increase in the walkthroughs, in the film study, in the in-depth teaching and learning concepts that Mike McDaniel talked about in his presser, where you're really going low speed. Let's get this down to where everyone knows everything they're doing on every given play, and then speed it up as you get into the practice sessions in the offseason.
Niner Van says, I don't think he's pushing them any harder than any other coach in the NFL. I mean, we're not there all the time. It's a fair question. Like, how do you know? Okay, well, let's look at the evidence from this year. The Niners got penalized a week of rookie minicamp because they were doing bump and run coverage at rookie minicamp, which is a big no. Everyone knows that. It's not new. It's been a rule for 10 years. No live contact until training camp. That includes bump and run coverage. Kyle knows that, and they did it anyway. And they put it out online. I mean, so that was careless. And again, that's the attitude of, we want max competition. Right. We want to max out on the physical aspect of preparing for football. But what was it that Yogi Berra said, that 90% of the game is mental and the other half is physical? Hey man, if it's 90% mental and you have the most complex offense in the league, and remember what Mike McDaniel said, it's learning a foreign language. It's total immersion. You have to be able to hear it and then instantly visualize the play. None of these rookies can do that right now, man. Why aren't you doing more mental teaching in the spring along with strength conditioning and recovery, as opposed to competition first? Rookie minicamp, dog. That's May 14th. And he has Diamador Lenore like locking up man-to-man press coverage, Austin Watkins Jr. I think that's the evidence right there of, man, maybe you could dial it back. I'm not saying don't practice, just dial it back a little bit.
Dial it back a little bit. These guys need to make it healthy into the season in order to have any type of an impact. You talked about learning a foreign language, and I am not an expert in that. I took 4 years of high school French, and I know very little.
Me too. I mean, the same thing, man, because we didn't have immersion. We just learned it in a textbook. We got good grades because it's not that hard if it's just on the hey, conjugate this verb. I got that all day. But then it's like an AP test.
You may have gotten good grades. I probably did not. But I certainly didn't learn French out on the practice field going 100 miles an hour, right? It was a classroom setting. It was focused on absorbing the information. And maybe that's a bad example since I didn't retain any of it anyway. But in high school, I'd have been able to get by with a little bit of French. So, I mean, it just strikes me as, let's focus a bit more on getting everything down first and then ramp it up. You touched on recovery, and I know this is a hot topic on 49ers Twitter and plenty of opinions on both sides, and I think that they're all valid. I wondered to myself whether I was just ahead of the curve. So my preferred physical activity is more on the endurance end. As you can see by my physique, I am not a heavyweight lifter. That is not my game.
As opposed to me. Just the biggest
those guns
of all time. Oh my God.
Those guns, Grant, put them away. They're scaring me. Yeah, no. So I'm all about cycling. And for a while I was prepping for these century rides, 100-mile rides, and training. So I got, one of these, not Swoop, but like one of those watches that does recovery. So I became really in tune with that. And it's amazing to me. You go a hard day of like 6 hours of riding, it advises you to do basically nothing for the next 2 days.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Which explains why all these U.S. men's national team guys got in trouble for whatever they were doing, right? Because they were basically supercharging recovery.
Yeah.
Isn't that basically what they were doing? Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely think that there is something to that, and it fits within. I don't think that we can point to that and say, hey, listen, it's all about recovery. I'm sure that the 49ers organization has an eye for recovery. And yet what is clear by the evidence is they may not be prioritizing it to the point that they need to.
So let's put a bow on this topic. What I want to tell the fans is I'm not putting this all on Kyle Shanahan. It's not all his fault. There are many variables here, but this is his variable, the practice injuries. The evidence we have, 32 players, and this violation in rookie minicamp. I think that's compelling evidence that Kyle needs to dial it back. He doesn't need to cancel minicamp. That was an overreaction. He wasn't forced to do that. Just teach, walk through, meeting, strength and conditioning. That's good.
The only thing I differ there from you is that I like the overreaction. I feel like it's about damn time. Do something. You know what I mean? I get that it is an overreaction on the scale of how you choose to address it. But to me, it's better than doing nothing. To me, it's better than just pretending that it didn't happen.
Fair. But here's where it's going to come back and bite him. By sending him home and not doing even meetings. Now, I think they're going to keep the rookies for a little bit, but this is where my head went. Let's say Trey Lance isn't ready at all year one. Then it's easy for me to go back and be like, well, maybe you shouldn't have wasted 2 weeks. Maybe he could have used those 2 weeks. So I'm loaded and ready for that one. You know what I'm saying?
And I'm ready. He said it multiple times about Jimmy. Well, if only he could have had a full offseason. You know,
I'm ready for it, man. Come on, you took the project and then you knew he needed reps and you cut it short 2 weeks early. Well, that my mind went to Trey right away. But he's supposed to be a quick learner. We'll see. I'm just loaded and ready for sure. Okay, I got something else I want to talk about, and this has been bugging me. I kind of did a dry run of this on Twitch yesterday, so if you were watching, you know where I'm going with this. But the Jeff Wilson Jr. story is the one that gets me because they keep saying it's a freak injury.
Right.
They keep like, well, there's nothing we can learn from this. This one in particular was a freak injury. He was in the weight room, yada, yada, yada. He made it to the locker room, was sitting down, stood up, turned, meniscus tore. And they keep focusing on the locker room, the standing, the turning in the locker room. Hey, man.
Just getting out of a chair. Could have happened to anybody.
But I keep going back and replaying what John said, what Lynch said, what Kyle said. And they laid out the facts of the case. I'm trying to look at this like a prosecutor or whatever, a juror. They said he was lifting, went to the locker room, got hurt. Why are they focused on the locker room when it seems to me they should be focused on the weight room? This is not a freak injury. This is a weight lifting injury. He was lifting. He went to the locker room. He sat down. He got up. He tore his meniscus. You need to be focused on the weight room. And the fact that they're not, I think, is another thing that you're seeing. Like, it's straight up denial. Denial, okay? Here's what happened. I'll tell you real quick, and then I want to get your reaction. I was talking to Will Blackman, and he was saying, look, when players go to the weight room in the facility, they're not freestyling. They get a program. They get a routine. They're supervised. You're doing X, Y, Z at this intensity with these people, and I'm watching. So I don't think Jeff Wilson Jr. just came to the Niners facility and was like, hey, man, I'm going to do everything wrong today. I'm sure he was doing exactly what he was supposed to freaking do. Yeah. Exactly what Dustin Perry and Ben Peterson wanted him to do. It was too rigorous for his body at that point in the offseason. They're supposed to know where he's at. Like, hey, maybe he shouldn't lift today because he needs 2 days off because of that monitor that you have or whatever. Whatever the case was, the plan for Jeff Wilson Jr. was wrong. And the Niners training staff is freaking culpable. And it's another piece of evidence that this training staff isn't good enough. The NHL, University of Minnesota, whatever combination isn't good enough. Jeff Wilson Jr. is Exhibit A. Yeah.
This is a tough one, man. You look at the injury and the way that you just laid it out there. It sure sounds to me a lot like a recovery or overuse injury, right? It strikes me as either a recovery issue where potentially he wasn't properly hydrated, right? Did a serious lifting session, and then things began to tighten up. And without the proper hydration, that elasticity for the muscles isn't there, right? Because it's not the tendon that's going to be weakened or cramping up or whatever. So it's the muscle holding that tendon. This again goes back to just my personal experience of overuse injuries from cycling and having a tight IT band and learning that really the band itself is a band. It's not a muscle. And therefore the issue is with the muscles that hold the band at either end not being strengthened in the proper way, and then other muscles pulling it in, causing my knee to come off center. And so it's this alignment that goes back to, is someone paying attention to the routine that you're doing? Are they aware of overuse issues you may have at any point along your skeletal or muscular frame? And then are you recovering properly? Are you hydrating? Are you hitting all of the supplements that you need to? And so to me, that jumps out. And I don't like to put any singular name out there, but there is one name that carries through that regime change throughout the shift to the NHL people that came in, and it's the gentleman coming out of Minnesota.
Justin Perry. And it seems like he does a great job of getting players stronger. I mean, look at George Kittle.
He
look
does.
At Raheem Mostert. Look at Fred freaking Warner. But Mostert's hurt. Jeff Wilson Jr. is seriously hurt. I mean, it seems if I wasn't there, but I'm guessing Jeff Wilson did some very heavy squats that day and maybe got his knees in some compromise. Maybe he didn't need to be lifting heavy squats. Clearly, he didn't need to be lifting heavy squats. Right. I'm just guessing. Whatever he was doing, didn't need to be doing on that day in freaking May. It was May, not June. Yeah. I don't know. To me, it's a clear training staff issue. He didn't do this at home. He did this on their watch with their program, and it didn't work. And I think what they should be what they should have done is fire the training staff right there, or explain to the fans why they're not going to try, why they still believe in the training staff. But don't say it's a freak injury, because it feels like you're protecting your training staff that you set up.
Yeah, that last part I definitely agree with in the idea of call it out. Don't just say it was a freak injury. I actually side with Kyle in this idea of sports players are pretty superstitious.
No doubt.
And so I don't think that you can really acknowledge the whatever you want to call it, curse, bad luck that exists within the building, because you're almost speaking it into existence with regard to players that now have to fight through the rest of the offseason with this in the back of their minds.
Or the front
am
of
I
their
going
minds.
to get? Yeah, right.
The front of their minds, yeah.
Yeah. The very first thing they think
Honestly,
about is they walk into the building.
Smartest thing Trent Williams did was like, I'm not going to practice here anymore. Maybe he will, but he hasn't practiced in a long time. Nick Bosa's like, I'm just going to stay in Florida.
Nick, stay in Florida, bud.
I'm not even stepping foot there. They really need to re-examine so much of their entire operation, because it's like they have the advanced level stuff down. They're cutting edge in terms of offensive X's and O's, and their defense was even better the last few years. But practice, you can't get through spring practice. You got penalized and canceled it early and still had 3 guys go down. Like, what is this, man? Was this high school? I'm sure there are high school coaches that have. I'm sorry. All right, let's talk about something. So there's a third arm of this, and it's the front office. Obviously, 8 years of drafting and trading and signing players who had injury issues is a huge contributing factor. And a lot of the players that got hurt in practice were guys who've gotten hurt before. So John has to wear this too, as well as Jed for signing off on that whole freaking game plan dating back to 2013 with Trent Baalke. But it seems like maybe these two are sort of asserting themselves now and taking control bit by bit from Kyle Shanahan. Do you see it that way? And if so, how?
I do. I think that this causation is probably the largest root cause to this problem. That's my personal belief on it, that the style of players that we drafted and the Moneyball approach to taking injured players dating back to the Baalke years is the largest single contributor. And I feel good about the idea that finally this offseason we seem to have acknowledged that and focused on drafting and bringing in free agents that are healthy and have a track record of being healthy. Other than the one safety out of USC, I believe that most of the rookies all have pretty good injury histories. Trey Sermon, a little bit there, but it's a running back. Of course, he's going to get some nicks and cuts along the way. It just is, to me, it's almost as if they had a system for counting cards, right? And so you tell yourself, well, when I go to Vegas, I'm going to implement my system, and I may get a run of bad cards, but I'm not going to stop my system. The system works. I'm just it's been a run of bad luck. And it felt like they stuck with this idea of value for players that have an injury history and just telling themselves, well, everyone does it in the league, right? We're just doing it more because we need to, because we've been a high performing team throughout the Harbaugh era. We had to find a way to stay competitive, and failed to acknowledge the idea that maybe the system we were using to count cards was off. Because it has truly devastated us. And the problem, if that is the root cause, as I suspect, the problem is 1 year's draft class and free agency is not going to solve that issue. You still have the vast majority of the team that's made up of those players. That's
where it's a systemic issue. I mean, you can change the practice schedule now. You can fire the training staff now. This is 8 years of a culture, of a system that you've built up, and you're going to have to purge it over time. Yeah.
And I assume that Dustin Perry was liked within the building, seeing as how he was promoted from assistant to the position.
He gets results in the weight room, man. These guys are yoked, but
he bulks them up. There's no doubt. And it has worked well for some of the players, but perhaps there's just a rigidity there to his style that isn't taking into account those that need to be more pliable.
Can we point out that George Kittle, the poster boy of Dustin Perry's training program, broke his foot running last year and missed 8 games? We like don't talk about that very much because we like George Kittle. Broke his foot running last year. What the hell was that?
Yeah.
Is that not exactly what we're talking about right here? Is
totally.
His body not breaking down?
Those are textbook overuse, right? Is stress fractures that occur from simply overusing a limb or, putting too much torque on that level.
The dude is 250 or whatever plus running a 4.5. Like, man, I'm 180 and I go out to the track at Piedmont High and try to run. I'm like, man, gravity's really pushing on me these days, man. It's not the same when I was 165 in high school. Like 250 running that fast. I can only imagine, man.
Yeah, just wait 10 more years, Grant. Gravity gets more powerful as you age, believe me.
Screw you, stop running. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. So are they asserting themselves? I mean, what are some of the data points that make you think they are? First of all, the draft pick of Trey Lance didn't feel like a Kyle draft pick, especially when he came out the Monday before and he like debuted the I'm pissed and leaning thing. While John Lynch is over there like, we're gonna get the guy we want. So that was the beginning, and then canceling minicamp. Is
canceling
this a Kyle
minicamp,
move, or is this a Jed move? Like, hey, forget about this. This is ridiculous.
And maybe even the Julio trade or lack thereof. If it were up to Kyle, would he have expended a couple more draft picks to bring in Julio, his guy? Kyle loves his guy.
He would trade 20, 30 draft picks. Who cares?
Another first rounder. 20. Don't we have a 2024? Just throw that in.
Hey, man, that's Jed's tab, man. Run it up.
I'll be gone by then.
Yeah.
No, it's to me, it does look as if. Now, I am a bit opposed to your view. I don't know if you're still of the view that Kyle wasn't in on Trey at all, but I do buy that maybe he wasn't as in on Trey as he sells. And
my guess would be that if he was ranking him, it was Mac Jones and then Trey. Like Trey, he liked Trey, but I think he probably had Mac one step ahead, whereas probably the rest of the organization was flipped. I
could buy that. Yes. I could buy that.
Yeah.
I still think it's the other way, but I could buy that being a possibility.
Know for sure.
We'll never know for sure. We'll never know.
Said everyone says that everyone says that you're right. So
well, right.
We'll have to put him on a lie detector.
The reality is that he came around to it. Whatever brought him over to the Trey Lance side, he came around to it.
He did.
And whatever he may say in front of the media, for sure. For sure, the fans directed by the Cohn Zone came to the rescue on that one.
We had to do it.
And so then you see the other moves that you have potentially Jed coming in. And I don't buy that Jed walks in and says, Kyle, this is what we're doing. But I do believe that there may have been a meeting with Kyle, Mike McDaniel, John, and Jed that was sort of
again? Practice?
Again?
2 in 1 day? Come on, man.
Let's rethink this. Let's do something. And what I applaud is that regardless of whether you believe that these two individuals are stepping up within their roles, which I believe would be a positive impact on Kyle. I think that one of Kyle's weaknesses is believing he can do everything.
Yeah.
And that's not his strength. His strength is play design and play calling. So maybe focus more of your energy there and allow other people in the building to come in and represent you in those areas and raise you up. Because that's what a good head coach does. He relies on the people around him in order to make his job easier, in order to be his multipliers, in order to be the people that give him back time to reinvest in the things that are valuable for him.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing either way. And if I'm incorrect about this and they're not asserting themselves, the other reality is that Kyle is maturing in those areas. So for me, it's a win-win. Either those people are stepping up around him or he's maturing. Either way, I'm on board.
That's fair. I guess the thing that bothers me about sending everyone home instead of just being like, look, no more competing in practice. We learned our lesson, but I don't want to send you home. Just because David Culley or whatever that guy's name in Houston said Texas home doesn't mean we got to do that too. The guy in Houston was like, we accomplished everything we want to accomplish. Oh, word? Did you do that, Niners? When you got when you got the violations and then you got the week canceled and then you got the 3 guys hurt? Did you just accomplish it? Why don't you have a new defensive coordinator? Okay. He's never been a DC before. He says he wants to tweak up the scheme a little bit. Give him an extra 2 weeks in the meeting room with his players. It could only help. Yeah. It could only help.
Not to mention that it's insulting to the fans to have that order of operations where clearly it's about the injuries, but then you come out and you're like, well, we did everything that we wanted to. We're just ahead of schedule, so we're going to cancel because of that. Like, give me a break, Kyle.
So I just feel like, I mean, it's only June and we don't know how this is going to work out, but it's going to be so easy if things go haywire to come back to this 2-week stretch and be like, well, that was just a wasted 2 weeks. Straight up waste. I mean, bowling, that's the best you could do, man. Get in the, I don't know, if I were a 22-year-old kid, I would, and Kyle Shanahan was like, we got a meeting. I'm going to show you everything you need to know about the Lions starting center. And then I'm going to do the Lions right guard. And then I'm like, I definitely want to freaking see it. Kyle Shanahan, I definitely got to see this. Instead, he's like, nah, man, just go home and do whatever the hell you want to do. And I'll see you guys when you can do 1-on-1s and 7-on-7s again. Like, that's all you're interested in is competition, man. Teach me. I want to know. I want to know. And the thing about Bill Walsh is he was a legendary teacher, man. You want to be the next Bill? All of his meetings and all of his installations are filmed in a vault because they were legendary. That should be you, Kyle. That should be
legendary.
You, Kyle. Legendary. And you can get the vault. That's what you have that.
He was such a teacher. Such a teacher that vault, if I understand it correctly, was created at his direction in order to provide it to his coaches when they were hired to be head coaches for other teams so that he could put together a collection of film on how he does things. And when Holmgren goes over and gets hired by another organization, he gifts him with that stuff to take with him to prepare him for that. I mean, the ultimate team player, the ultimate coach, the ultimate teacher, and a lot could be learned there. But again, for me, it's just frustrating because Kyle is good about being pretty forthright with the media about some things. And in this area, it just feels like he's spinning it and lying to me. And so that feels disingenuous. And as a fan, I don't appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, just looking at Kyle's attitude, and you talk about the practice injuries, his whole attitude is, I'm not going to change. This is football. It is what it is. He even said he's not going to adjust his training camp schedule at all. So Jed and John need to assert themselves. They need to assert themselves.
They do. That instance, I think Kyle will say that regardless of whether he plans to change practices or not. That goes back to the curse for me that he can't acknowledge it, can't speak it into existence.
Okay.
He needs to make the changes behind the scenes. So again, I feel like we'll see that going forward. Unfortunately, this is something we're not going to know how much they've addressed it for years.
Until we see, yeah. All right, let's switch gears and get off the injury thing because it's negative and it's tiring and it's tiring. All right, let's talk about Mike McDaniel. He had his opening press conference a couple of days ago and we just roasted him, man. Roasted him because he was nervous and he couldn't get the words. He didn't present himself that well, but honestly, went back and looked at the transcript. He had a lot of interesting things to say. And the only to have the only takeaway of your first impression of a guy be he talks funny is, pretty low-hanging fruit. So let's give him his due. I don't think that was fair. I think he's really good at what he does, and if he can't verbalize it, that's okay. It seems like there's a lot of substance behind the things he's saying.
I agree, and I'm glad that you started out with that because otherwise I'm gonna have to come a little hard. I mean, don't nobody be talking about my Mike McDaniel.
Yeah,
that's my boy. Yeah. But I can actually relate. So I see Mike as actually having a fairly similar communication style to myself. And I can relate to fumbling that first answer and then just going downhill from there. I can't tell you what happens, but it's just this effect of like knowing it's a train wreck and up here.
I already blew it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's just, you can't recover. Yeah. And it felt like that's what it was to him. I thought I should have some good hat game, but I can't with the,
or maybe the guy just has social anxiety. Maybe he just naturally doesn't feel comfortable in those settings, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
The hat game thing leads me to what I question about it, which is that I see him as a coach with some drip, right? In that interview with Kiana Martin, that was a great interview to see him speaking more fluently and talking about his sense of style. He came in with the hat game wasn't on point. So my theory is one of two things. Either he didn't know he was going to speak that day, or he just didn't care. And so
he knew he was scheduled. He was scheduled. When they sent out the OTA release, it was Kyle week 1, D'Amico week 2, and McDaniel week 3. They saved him, and he had the longest time to prepare and get himself together.
Yeah,
he looked nervous as hell, man, and that's okay. That's okay.
Totally okay.
He'll loosen up, but maybe that's just not his setting. In which case, it doesn't freaking matter, and it's kind of just a low blow to be like, hey, he talked funny.
It's a low blow, but Niners fans should celebrate it. Because we're talking about an offensive genius here, right? I mean, when you look at what he has done within the run scheme, I am speculating there that there's a reason Kyle kept him.
I mean, the fact that he's gotten so far talking like that tells you how smart he is. I mean, it's not like he's a face man. It's not like they're pushing him out there because he makes the organization sound good. It's because his ideas are indispensable. And a lot of times people put on Twitter, like, look at this run play. Kyle Shanahan is a genius. I always think that's McDaniel, man. I'm just saying, I think that's McDaniel.
Yeah. And the odds of him getting hired away as a head coach, if he doesn't address that public speaking, are less. And we should celebrate that as 49ers fans. Yes. We want that continuity. We want him to stay here for a while. And it also struck me that, I am a big believer in this idea within corporate worlds of followership. Which is that many people want to be a leader, and the world actually has more people trying to be a leader than we need. We need more people who are followers to people who are leaders. And if you listen to him throughout that entire press conference, one thing is clear. Yeah. He looks up to Kyle Shanahan.
He's cool being number 2. Like, he wants to be Scotty.
100% okay with Kyle getting all the praise. I mean, he dished out so much praise throughout that.
Yeah. I was like, Mike, do you want to call plays? He was like, are you kidding? Why would I want to do that? We got the greatest. Nah, man. Nah.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
The god of play calling is over my left shoulder.
That's Michael. Okay. I know my role. That's cool.
I'm here to contribute. The man takes care of that play calling. And that's positive. I mean, the only worrisome thing is when you have groupthink, if you have too many people that are supportive of one another. But I'm all about building one another up, putting out those compliments to one another, because I think this is a top-notch coaching staff, and I think they deserve the compliments. They have some obvious flaws that they need to address, but certainly play design, offensive play calling are not problems with this team.
No, and I think Mike McDaniel is definitely like the ace up the sleeve. He's really good at it. But I think my last thing I want to say about McDaniel is, does he really need to give press conferences? I mean, come on. He doesn't call plays. Okay, they call him the offensive coordinator, and it's almost like Kyle's like, yeah, man, you're my boy, so like, I really like you, and I want to give you that, I want to give you like a raise and a promotion, but I can't really. It's like Michael Scott removing the "to the" from Dwight. It's like, okay, I'm going to go from calling you assistant to assistant to the manager to the assistant manager. Like, it's like, okay, I'll give you a nice, better title, but you don't do anything different. So I don't see why we need to talk to him. I mean, you're smart, but this isn't your forum, and you don't make any decisions at any point. So let's just bring Kyle out again, man. I mean, that's all I'm thinking. Unless he doesn't need to do it.
I like his lack of ego to where he basically said as much in the interview. He's like, it's a natural progression for me to now be the offensive coordinator. Not much has changed. My day-to-day is still pretty much the same thing, but now I've got a title. So
right, exactly. So the only other offensive coordinator that didn't call plays that I covered was the dude under Chip Kelly, whose name I freaking forget. Because he didn't matter. I mean, no offense, man. They would send him up there every week, and we would ask him questions like he had any control or deciding power. He's like, I don't know, man. I mean, that's a better question for Chip. Yeah, I know. Why don't you bring him out here, dude? Yeah. Like, they're putting you in a bad position. And again,
the difference here, Mike matters. He may not be the public face, but Mike McDaniel matters.
True. Whoever that guy was under Chip, but I can't remember his name. Doesn't matter. Okay, maybe I'll remember it at some point.
I'm sure somebody in the chat will remember it.
I don't think they will. I mean, the guy never really mattered. Sorry. All right. Jimmy G, do you think he gets dealt midseason? What do you think?
So do I think he will? No. My prediction that I made on an answer to a mailbag question was that he would actually play 16 out of 17 games. So I'm predicting a reversion to the norm, statistically speaking. But I can see a scenario where it would happen. And so I think it's worth exploring because it's well within the realm of possibilities. Whether Jimmy G does or does not get traded will hinge greatly upon how the 49ers are doing as an organization. There are plenty of ways the season could spin out of control, and all of a sudden it becomes about recouping draft capital, or even in a scenario where you're doing okay, but you're not doing great. Jimmy's playing well enough to get you some draft capital back. Trey is performing well in practices to where you have some confidence he could come in and start. And now you want to get ahead of the curve and send Jimmy out before people realize you're ready to move on to Trey so you can maximize that draft capital. So I started getting into it. I heard this. It was actually Mav who pointed to this on the All 49ers roundtable, and it got me spinning on this. So I started looking into it. Well, what are the teams out there that could possibly be interested? And it's pretty bleak. Looking across depth charts of first and second, because there are so many scenarios where the first guy up could get injured, and that would then push a team to be like, well, let's get Jimmy G because he's available. We're a contending team and we want to stay relevant. But quite honestly, there are not many teams that have a good quarterback without someone as a backup who you would view as either equal to Jimmy or more potential, and therefore someone you would think they'd want to invest in. The only three teams that jumped out at me as possibilities in this trade are the Eagles. If you have Jalen Hurts perform poorly, do you turn to Joe Flacco? I don't know. I feel like Jimmy's an upgrade over Flacco for sure. And the Eagles certainly have the potential to be in the race for the NFC East. Feels to me like the NFC East could be wide open this year. And if they're in that playoff push, they could be motivated to bring in a starter. Washington football team is another one. If Fitzpatrick loses the magic, they don't have much behind it. I didn't recognize any of those names on their depth chart. And then Carolina with Sam Darnold, you know, if he's still seeing ghosts on the field, there's, again, not much behind him. They didn't spend too much in draft capital to bring in Sam Darnold. So I think that they could still be players looking for a starter.
Okay. I have a prediction I'm going to make. I feel pretty confident about it, and I don't know what I base it on, but here's my prediction. The 49ers will never trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Not that they don't want to. My prediction is they'll never trade him, that he'll play out his contract and he'll be here this year, next year, and be gone in 2023. And the reason I say this is not because they need him, they want him. I think his contract isn't movable. I think that it's the contract 26, 27 next year. I don't think anyone wants it, but I could be wrong.
No, I like that prediction. But in the offseason, it's a pretty clean escape. So at that point, if they don't just cut him next year, then it's because they would want him. So you're predicting that he'll be there.
Only way they cut him is if Trey Lance looks great and and like no one cares and they're like, just move on. But if Trey Lance doesn't play that much this year or he looks kind of shaky, they're never going to get anything for Jimmy unless, because he's getting paid as a top 10 quarterback, but everyone knows he can't even stay healthy. He's like a fringe backup. So unless he would have to stay healthy all year and do basically the whole 2019 thing over again. And then even then, at that point, he'd be 30. What is his worth? You might be able to get something for him, but I feel like his value is always going to be real low because of the contract and his injury history and his age.
Yeah. So I think that's the most likely scenario for me is the trade in the off. Jimmy does well this year, proves his worth. And then the trade in the offseason gets something. Because that last year of the contract being non-guaranteed, the new team would have that negotiation with Jimmy beforehand of, hey, we're going to get you some guaranteed money and we're going to extend this thing out a couple of years, but we're going to need you to take that pay cut, this year in 2022 because of that $27 million ridiculous cap number that doesn't correlate to where I feel like Jimmy is on the spectrum of quarterbacks.
Do you think he's too handsome to be traded as Mufasa said? Mufasa's dead, but it's nice to have him come back just to have a comment about Jimmy Garoppolo's handsomeness.
That was dark for a second there.
It was dark.
Yes, Mufasa.
The whole Lion King story is quite dark for children.
It really, dude, Disney doesn't play when it comes to
like Hamlet, stories. Is it not? It's kind of a little Hamlet-y.
Yeah.
Kid's dad gets killed by the uncle. He has to go back and get revenge. It's very dark.
Dude, when you
made Hamlet into a kid's movie.
A lot of those fairy tales, man, have some questionable stuff. They were all meant to scare children, right?
That's a good point.
Teach you life
Especially
lessons.
the Grimm's fairy tales.
Grimm. Ooh, yeah. I mean, if being handsome were a reason not to trade someone, then yes, Jimmy would be untradeable. If that factored into trade scenarios, I mean, the man has just a jawline to be envied. To be envied.
Yes, absolutely. Isaac says, well, sorry. And sorry about that. Isaac says Disney is very dark period. Every movie starts with parents dying. LOL.
Yeah.
And then
how about Bambi?
Leaving says Bambi's mom.
There you go. Lee and I are on the same page.
I'm alive, my sentence. All right. Let's have some projections, man. Who do you think will be the Niners' leading rusher in 2021? And keep in mind, this is an injury question. Yes, it is. Every question is an injury question. Don't forget. Who's the leading rusher in 2021?
Again, on a most recent mailbag that I did, I tried to tell myself I'm going to stop prefacing every answer with, well, if healthy, but I can't.
No,
I can't stop saying it.
You have to. You can't. I think we get tired of it. Basically, what happens is Niner fans and analysts get tired of it, and then they stop considering it. And then 3 practices happen. You're like, right. It's the Niners that I cover, right?
Oh yeah. We need to.
This is the reoccurring. It's Groundhog Day.
It's unreal to me. So my prediction for how the running back situation shakes out is that Trey Sermon gets that Tevin Coleman role that's headed into the teeth of the defense on the early downs. Yeah. And so if we're measuring here by total carries, I could say Trey Sermon might lead the pack. But I think the most traditional way to look at it is total rushing yard leader. And I think even though the Niners will and should reduce Raheem Mostert's carries to that 10 to 12 range, I think he will be the leader in total yards rushing for the season. I think that he'll maintain that 6+ yards per carry average, put him at, let's say, an average of 11 carries per game. You're talking roughly 65 yards a game. I'm going to guess he probably misses 2 games to injury at some point throughout the year. You're still looking at 1,000-yard season right there, right about 1,000 yards. So I think leading rusher, 1,000 yards, Raheem Mostert, still my favorite running back on the team, hands down.
He's my favorite running back too, but I'm going full cynical here. And all my answers to these questions are going to be about who do I think can stay healthy the longest. And as much as I love Raheem, I'm looking at his career. 2015, he played 11 games. 2016, he played 3. 2017, he played 11. 2018, he played 9. 2019, he played 19. 2020, he played 8. And he's hurt right now. I love Raheem Mostert so much, and I hope he gets it together, but I can't predict him. And who can I predict? I'm trying to go through it. I mean, Jermichael Hasty, no. Trey Sermon, no. He got hurt a bunch in college. I mean, he missed all of 2019, basically.
Right.
I got to say Wayne Gallman here, bro.
Ooh.
Wayne Gallman, just because he played 15 games last year. He'll be the last dude standing. I know that's really bleak. I'm just trying to be right, though. Wayne Gallman.
I think it's fair. And I think he'll probably miss week 1 so that you can get that whole non-guaranteed veteran thing, right? They'll cut him at the end of camp.
Put him on the practice squad, call him up week 2.
And then bring him up for week 2. And with those 16 games he plays, there's still a fair chance. I mean, that guy ran into 12 8-man boxes all the time for New York last year and averaged 4.6 yards per carry, I believe. So he's no joke. I think that's a fair prediction.
It's not an exciting prediction. It's probably the person 49er fans least wanted to hear, but come on, man. He played 15 games last year. That's not something to sneeze at.
Yeah, if you're right, then the ground game won't be as fierce as I think most 49ers fans are hoping it will be. So
he's better than Tevin Coleman. Let's give him that. All right?
Yes.
He's definitely better than Tevin Coleman.
Well, I don't disparage Tevin, but I would also agree with that statement. He is better.
I disparaged Tevin. 49ers Ultimate Report says it's so weird to agree with Grant about Jimmy could for the reminder of the contract. No, but what you meant to say is actually weird that you agree with me that Jimmy could be here for the remainder of his contract. Hashtag still not a fan of Grant. I like that. Hashtag still. I like that. Appreciate you. Thank you. All right.
Keep it real.
We got Wayne Gallman. I got Wayne Gallman as the leading rusher. That's exciting stuff. Now, who will be the 49ers leading receiver in 2021?
So again, this was something that I kind of addressed in a mailbag question of, could we have 3,000-yard receivers, pass catchers on our team with Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. I think we could. The likelihood of all 4 players that need to stay healthy for that to happen, Jimmy G, and then those 3 pass catchers, is slim. And so I predicted Kittle and Brandon Ayuk would both eclipse the 1,000-yard marker. But Deebo, even if you – so with Kittle and Brandon Ayuk last year, if you take their stats for the games they played and multiply it out over a 16-game season or 17 like next year, you would get to a 1,000-yard season. So they at least were on track to hit that 1,000-yard.
Yeah.
Deebo wouldn't have. He'd have fallen just short of 1,000, again, if you played out an entire season based on the games that he did play. But then I started to think, now I'm back to this, well, if healthy type of thing that I want to get away with. I know you're going full bore into, well, you've got to be healthy. Yeah. I'm reversing course. Okay. I am a Deebo fan. Let me tell you, I am a Deebo fan. I have Deebo's riding down the street on a bike. It's been on my phone for like 14 months. Whenever it first came out, that hasn't gone anywhere. And so I'm a fan, and I don't know why I'm letting myself get jaded. So I'm reversing course, and I'm saying that Deebo's going to stay healthy, and Deebo is going to lead the team in receiving yards this year. Big time prediction.
I like how you didn't say Kittle. I'm not going to say Kittle either, man. No one talks about this. We love Kittle. Kittle's really cool. I wouldn't say it to his face. George, I would never say it to your face, but I think we're all kind of expecting you to get hurt again, man. And it's nothing against you. You you play hella hard. It's wonderful, man. It's great. It's great. But yeah, I mean, it seems like every year you miss a little more. So I'm not saying Kittle either. Deebo's an interesting call. I think I've said Deebo on previous roundtables doing the same thing. It could be him. I go back and forth. He's such a big part of the run game too, that some of those touches have to be carries. Some of those touches have to be like reverses and straight up handoffs in the backfield. So maybe that it works against him, that the fact that he's such a good running back too, that some of his yards will be rushing yards. Although fair. I don't think he'd had that many rushing yards. Like a lot of the time it's that push pass that still counts as a catch.
Right.
Which is funny.
Love that for fantasy football.
So good. I'm going to go with Ayuk. I mean, he's hurt, and he's a lot like Bosa in the sense that I think he overworks himself. He looks like a bodybuilder, which concerns me. Those are the guys that I feel like are the ones that are always at risk. They don't have enough water weight. They don't have enough fat. They don't have enough room for error, is what I think. But Ayuk's hella young. He had 96 targets last year in 12 games as a rookie. I think he's going to get more targets this year. I think he's going to get just a ton of opportunities, and I think he'll get pretty close to 1,000 yards. So I think it'll be Ayuk, but I don't know.
And let me just say that while they have maxed out their frames, 49ers fans could take solace in the idea that clearly both he and Bosa are on top of their training regimens. And so
no one works harder than those two guys. No one works harder than those two guys, except for Kittle. I mean, those 3 guys are like the poster boys of the 49ers strength and conditioning program. But
yeah, they take it seriously enough that you could see them work through these issues and get to a point to where they're doing enough whatever needs to be implemented in their game in order to get more pliable, whatever their issues may be. So I like that prediction. I think that it's going to be a great season from him, regardless of whether he is the leading receiver in yards or not. But I like to call out on Deebo of the rushing yards. If we had gone total yards, I'd feel better about my prediction. Yeah.
Yep. Jose Julio Flores Campos, holla, says, I'm a Grant fan. We love you in Mexico. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. I'm a Jose Julio Flores Campos fan.
Dude,
that's my name too. Whenever I go out, the people always shout, there goes Jose Julio Flores Campos. I like that. That's a great name, man. A+ name.
International star, Grant. And then by default, I get to just crawl into the limelight and get a little bit of that goodness.
If only I was an international star. That'd be pretty cool. At least there's like a few people around the world who know me. I did go out last week for dinner and someone said Grant, and it was like the greatest feeling of all time. But that stuff never happens. Yeah. I'd like it to.
I'm surprised it doesn't.
I'd like it to, but it doesn't. I don't know. The Niner Vance says, quick prediction. Who wins more games this year, Niners or Jets? Quick prediction. I mean, it better be the Niners, right? It better be the Niners. Are you kidding?
So I am of the opinion that Kyle is pretty safe on his seat. If the Jets win more games than the 49ers this year, I will reverse course on that stance. I agree with you on this one that it better be the 49ers. We're in trouble if it's the Jets. Unless they have some weird 15-2 season, we're in trouble if it's the Jets.
True. Not your average sports kid who calls into the Cohn phone and lives in South Carolina and is the resident Gamecock expert for 49ers Twitter says, as the Deebo Samuel insider, I'm not. He is, though. He's had one big injury in high school and all but 1 year in college. He's been injured most of his football life, so it's unlikely he's healthy. And the way he plays is unlike anyone else, so it's not exactly surprising, but
yeah, that was my reasoning when I answered that he wouldn't have 1,000-yard season just a couple days ago that I've now reversed course on. It was due to that injury concern. I am now actively choosing to speak into existence that Deebo Samuel will be healthy throughout the year. I am putting it out there. Other Niners fans are going to take this narrative and run with it, and we're going to speak it into existence.
Look at you doing the Lord's work. William Bennett says, you're my man, Grant, but don't let the fame get to your head. Too late. Thanks. All right, let's move seriously. On. Too late. Last topic. What is with the fan base's endless love for Kyle Shanahan? It's like they like him even more than me, and I don't get that. I mean, come on. I don't have a losing record. No, forget me. What is it with Kyle, man? I'm sure there's a million things, but can we list them? I've never seen a losing coach have such a loyal fan base. Before we get into it, hold on. This killed me today, man. I wake up, I get an email. There's some coaches poll in USA Today that ranked Kyle Shanahan the number 4 head coach. Okay, number 1 is Belichick. 2 is Andy Reid. 3 is John Harbaugh. 4 is freaking Kyle Shanahan ahead of Arians, Carroll, and Tomlin, other guys who've won Super Bowls. All right, I'll let you talk. I just want to read this because it killed me. In 4 years as head coach of the Niners, Kyle Shanahan has a losing record. In fact, his team has finished with a winning mark just one time. However, numbers lie in this case. What? Shanahan is a top-notch coach. So whatever. Numbers lie? I'm sorry. I came from the school of you are what your record says you are, and that's how it is for every other coach. But Kyle is a very lucky man. Everyone sees it from his perspective. I love it. I love it, man. Kyle, respect. So why? What is it about this man?
First of all, I'm a big-time Kyle fan. I would rather have Kyle than any other coach in the league, even though I think that 4th is a way generous ranking there.
Hey, and I'm very hard on Kyle Shanahan, but I've never said the Niners should fire him. I try to help. I've hired myself as quality control just because I like Kyle so much. So
it's very generous of you. Very generous of you.
Yeah.
You've devoted your time to this topic and tried to improve his standing there. Yeah, to me, so I love the first 3 in that list. I'm a big John Harbaugh fan, especially around his beliefs on servant leadership. Anyone who hasn't seen a video he did a while back on that, Google John Harbaugh servant leadership. It's fantastic. But for Kyle, it is a bit inexplicable how everyone, and especially the national media, does forgive him for his record. And I do think that it's fair to say he has this potential. It's fair to say he is this genius. And I think that you have to do a better job.
The top head coach in the league. He could.
But
4 now. 4.
No, that seems unfair to people who have done it.
Accomplished things. Man, it is. So can we go through the ultimate list of things that people are not that they like about him, but that they're like, I don't know. What is it about this guy?
To me, there's 5 that jump out. I'll go through them and then we can kind of roll through one by one and see if they're valid and whether it's potential or reality. To me, it's bloodlines, cool factor.
Oh, now, absolutely. Okay, so you do all 5 and then we'll go through each one.
All 5. Bloodlines, cool factor, offensive genius, national media hype, and the eye test.
Okay, let's do each one at a time.
Bloodlines.
That's obvious. I mean, it's not just that Mike Shanahan was his dad. It's that Shanahan was the offensive coordinator the last time the Niners won a Super Bowl. There's a specific type of offense that looks right. With the fullback on the field and the quarterback under center, it kind of looks like the 1980s 49ers. It feels like, hearkening back to the past when they didn't do that for so long. I mean, Singletary was the Bears. Nolan was the Ravens. Freaking Harbaugh was the Bears. I mean, they like neglected their past for so long, and it looked like re-embracing it with Kyle Shanahan. That's part of it.
And that one to me is warranted. You have a offensive system that mirrors an offensive system that was wildly successful for the 49ers in the past. You have Mike Shanahan's ability to find and build these running backs to incredible levels that seem to come out of nowhere. And that carries forward into Kyle. So you see common themes that carry forward from his father to him. Yep. And it's also fair to assume that, much like the relationship I see with you and your father, I would assume you're a better journalist because of the simple fact that your father is a phenomenal journalist.
Thanks.
And so I think the same is true for Kyle. Yes. I think that his father is a phenomenal head coach. Yeah. Well, and therefore it's fair to assume that he has passed along some of that goodness to Kyle.
Well, I mean, we know that Kyle's a phenomenal play designer and play installer. So why? Because he's been exposed to that since he was born. Yeah.
Not you do wonder if some of the negative things have come through too with the physical practice style of old school mentality. You wonder if he needs to progress in that area. And then the cool factor, right? We'll get back to the coach drip and whatnot between him and Mike. That's pretty real. I feel like that is appealing to maybe players even more than it is to the fans. Like, we love to obsess over it as fans, but when you see that players think Shanahan's cool too, that's something.
Yep. I mean, he's young. He wears the hat. He's got the Yeezys. He's kind of like speaks the same language. He listens to Lil Wayne. I mean, there are cultural markers that separate him from. He's not a boomer. He's not 55 years old, and I'm not sure that he might be concerned. I mean, his dad spoke at Trump rallies, but he wears the right shoes and the right hat, so people like him. I don't know.
Yeah, to me, that's acceptable that as fans, we love him for that. Yeah. But that one is like, why are you giving him any break on what his record is because he's cool?
Yeah.
Like, that has no bearing on ability to actually produce as a head coach. Maybe we shouldn't value that trait about him in the way that we do.
And maybe you should hold him to a higher standard because his last name is Shanahan. Instead of giving him the benefit of the doubt, like, well, he should know. I mean, his dad taught him. Like, I don't know, man. Prove it on your own. Anyway.
Yeah. There's definitely something to that. Offensive genius. So this one ties into me, and maybe we should keep these separated, but for me, you can't take away the eye test from the offensive genius, because it goes back to, well, great, offensive genius, but if you look at points scored, games won, all of those factors, I don't see a correlation between offensive genius and production on the field.
He did have the 2016 year, which was, he didn't win it. But he that was one of the top 10 offenses of all time, that 2016 Falcons team.
Should being a great offensive coordinator count when being judged as a head coach?
Well, when I was a kid, the offense we always used when we played Madden, I mean, was the Rams. It was all about Mike Martz and the Rams. When you had Madden, you want to play with Warner and Falk and all those guys. Like, that was the offense in the NFL 20 years ago.
Fastest he was show on turf.
Mm-hmm. And he was an abysmal head coach. Just an abysmal head coach. Even though he went to a Super Bowl.
Right.
He lost. Mike Martz. Remember Mike Martz? It's like people forgot that there's this whole thing about coordinators who don't translate. So yeah, I mean, Kyle had 2016. It was cool. He also had 2012. It was really cool. Mike Martz had a bunch of years.
Yeah.
And he was not fit to be a head coach for a lot of reasons.
Yep.
A lot of reasons.
Yeah. I think that when you're talking about offensive genius, it's fair to use that to then say, hey, this guy as a play designer and a play caller is, if you're ranking that play caller, play designer, I'm fine with him at 4. I'm fine with him at 1 in that, right? If you're just talking about play design, I'm fine with that.
We're
talking about.
It's Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. That's it? Yeah. Is it those 4? Greg Roman is kind of the wild card because his run game is quite intricate. But those 5.
Quite intricate, those 5. But his pass game is sometimes atrocious.
Yeah, but those are the 5. But we're not talking about that. He got ranked ahead of Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season. It's like,
I don't get the disrespect that gets on Mike Tomlin's name. I have a buddy who's a Steelers fan, and there have been years where he was lukewarm on him. I was like, you don't know how good you have it. Mike Tomlin is phenomenal. Yeah. So I get it. It should be more about results. By the way, just want to show out, as you're showing those little questions, I got to call out. I forgot to, my bad. But the question about rusher, receiver came from Josh Mangold. My man Josh is sending me in questions to the 49ers mailbag at gmail.com. I appreciate him, and I want to make sure a shout out. And then it was B Money who put in the idea around the endless love for Kyle Shanahan. I had to have a nod to the endless love sound of
that's true
of Motown.
And I'd like to think that B Money got the idea of the endless love for Shanahan from Lionel Richie.
Yeah,
because that's 100%. A great song. 100%. What I wanted to say, was there any
national media hype is the last one? National media hype.
That's huge because the national media, he has all this hype because of his dad. His dad is the 3-time champion. His dad has a lot of national media people who have been established since the early 90s. I mean, you know who wrote Mike Shanahan's biography?
Adam Schefter, right?
That's right. Adam Schefter. So there's a lot of serious people who are like 30 years in the game who love Mike and are kind of indebted and see things from that family's perspective. So that's like a perfect storm of benefit of the doubt for a head coach. And God love him for having it, man. God love him.
And it truly benefits him in all the other categories, right? When you have people constantly singing your praises, it raises your stock in every other element. When you have people talking about, oh, well, his dad was so phenomenal, people are reminded, oh, yeah, he comes from an NFL bloodline. When they talk about him on the sideline, it's like, oh, yeah, he's pretty cool. The players love him. When you're talking about, wow, I've never seen a play design like this where it's so intricate to see the blocking schemes, people are like, oh, yeah, he's an offensive genius. So you're told this repeatedly from the national media. I think the biggest contributor to that endless love has got to be the hype.
My endless love. Good song. All right. Before we
I was hoping that would come through at some point, my man.
You kept setting it up. You kept teeing it up. All right.
Yeah, you know I had to.
Before we go, we meant to do this before. Rob's been on the show a bunch of times. You like Rob. I like Rob. Rob's really good. You should subscribe to Rob's YouTube channel because it's really good. I don't know if I plugged it before. It's in the description. I just put it in the chat. Definitely add it to your list of YouTube channels that you subscribe to because you probably didn't even know we had one and you watch them once a week. So I'm just saying it's in the chat. It's in the description. Click on it.
Please do. You'll see some mailbag stuff in there. I mean, right now there's only 4 or 5 videos on the page, right? But content is building. You'll see some creative stuff come out from me where I think I'm funny and I try to prove that to everybody. But you'll also see serious side of me like you see on here with Grant. I like to think I've got good range. Maybe not the kind of range Grant does, but good range. The
other thing you don't know about Rob is he comes through with a detailed syllabus every week of what we're talking about. It's like 2 pages. It's multiple topics with subpoints for subpoints per subpoint. I was like, well, wow. It's very impressive, man. Well, most people are like, hey, so what are we talking about this week? I don't know, man. Let's talk about it for 3 minutes. Rob is like up late, and I definitely respect the grind. So Rob is the truth. Definitely subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll be back in 45 minutes with Coach Jay talking about something. I don't know. We got to call each other and talk about
it. Me and Coach Jay celebrating Ball Guy Day.
That's right. All right, guys. See you in 45.